Instructor Megan, and in this video I'm going to talk about the architecture of participation as well as some other points from your reading this week. And then next week we're going to talk about collective intelligence, which I'm really excited about. This week we're going to sort of form the foundation for participation, which is what kind of creates collective intelligence. So the big thing to understand to start out this week is the difference between mass media and social media. So those of you who are media students, which you're all in the College of Communication, Information, and Media, so this should be familiar to you, you know that what we think of as traditional media is typically mass media. And mass media is media that is sort of manufactured by a group and then distributed to a large volume of people. So a newspaper is a great example of mass media. People who work at a newspaper go out and report what they believe should be reported. They write articles. They select the articles they believe are important. They put them in the newspaper. It is printed in a fixed form and delivered to people's houses. So this is mass media. This is taking a group of people who act as gatekeepers, selecting what information is important and putting their own spin on it, or their own, even just by selecting what goes in the newspaper, they're sort of altering what is important to people. And then it's printed and given to people, and people don't really have a conversation with it. They get the newspaper, they read it, and they believe that that's what's important for that day. So in mass media, you have gatekeepers, people who select what should be distributed, and as a result, mass media has sort of a framing effect where mass media has a really good platform from which to set agendas. So it's actually called agenda setting. So newspapers, 30 years ago, before the internet was as widespread as it is now, newspapers were agenda setters. If newspapers didn't feel it was important, if people at newspapers didn't feel it was important to discuss economic situations in the United States, and they didn't, then that was not part of people's agenda. Most people then didn't really sit and think about that. So in mass media, you have this sort of manufactured set of information, and it's put in fixed form and distributed to large numbers of people. Social media is the antithesis of this. So social media is not manufactured by an entity that is a gatekeeper that performs agenda setting, but rather organic. It comes from the ground up. It's a more democratic process. By lots of participation by a lot of people, or even just a little bit of participation by a lot of people, we who create and participate in social media set the agenda ourselves. So we're not relying on a group of reporters and editors to decide what's important. We're able to get a lot of information and sort it out ourselves and decide what's important. And then we might tweet or pass on or blog about the information that we believe is important. And in that way, we can become our own agenda setters. So now we get to set the agenda in social media instead of relying on other entities to set the agenda. You hear about really crazy things with mass media in the past, things that you just can't imagine would happen today, like William Randolph Hearst trying to sort of blacklist a film by calling movie theaters and telling the theaters, if you play this film that I don't like, I will never run your ads. I will never run an ad for you in any of my papers ever again, and sort of strong-arming these theaters into basically blacklisting a film because he doesn't like the film. To think about that today, that's crazy. It's difficult to imagine someone getting away with that. It for sure still happens, but because we live in a social media world, that seems crazy to us, that one person can have such power that they can blacklist a film because they don't like it. With social media, we set our own agenda. So if we like the film, we tweet about the film, we blog about the film, and we sort of can counteract the power of someone who's able to threaten to pull advertising or something like that. And that's what you're going to read about this week in some of your readings, is how social media pressures governments, organizations, entire societies into doing things by sort of creating this organic agenda that arises out of what people participating in the social media believe is important. It can actually put pressure on governments and other entities. And so one lesson that I hope you'll take out of your reading this week is just how empowering it is to be involved in social media. Even if you're just participating at sort of a basic level by passing on information that you believe should be seen. You have power now that you didn't have with the mass media models. In the old mass media models, if you felt that the newspaper wasn't covering issues that you thought were important, what did you do about it? I mean, you really couldn't do anything. You could write a letter to the editor and hope that they published it. But with social media, you have that power. If you speak out about something and you get your friends on social media to speak out about it, then eventually that's going to travel really far. And we'll look at networks in the future and learn how it travels far. But the important thing to understand this week is that you have power with social media. We become our own agenda setters. We set the agenda that we believe is important instead of being spoon-fed the agenda. And you're going to read, or you have read this week, about architectures of participation. This is what makes that possible. So architectures of participation, architectures is really a key word here. Architecture of participation, that doesn't just mean that everyone's participating in social media and because of that they set their own agenda. Architectures of participation actually means building, using architecture, using building strategies to build an environment in which that's possible. So architecture of participation is the idea of social media strategists building these tools and these environments where we can be our own agenda setters, where we can share, where we can have discussions, where we can let people know what's important to us. So this is the idea that social media strategists have to sort of design a building for people to live in, and they have to be able to live in that building in an empowering way. So for those of you who want to work in social media in the future, when you work in social media, what you're really doing is you're building an architecture of participation. So maybe you work for Prius. You work for that brand, and you want to help people talk about and promote sustainable technologies in the car industry. You want people on social media to believe in your message of sustainable practices, and you want people to promote it for you. You can build social media elements that allow people to do that. So you could put together a site for Prius owners, and in fact that exists. Actually, I don't know if it does anymore, but when Prius as a brand first rolled out, there was a website where you could go and you could talk about what it was like to be a Prius owner, and you can encourage other people to buy Priuses. And Toyota created that space. They were the architects of that space, and they created rules that allowed people to participate. So when you're designing these areas, these architectures of participation, the medium has to make it really easy for people to participate. And that's why we're seeing such a boom in social media, because technology is allowing us to create really simple ways of participating. You can use Twitter if you don't have a computer. As long as you have a phone that can text, you can tweet. You can participate in sort of the Twitter sphere, and you can be a part of the conversations that happen on Twitter. The system has to have, it has to help people feel like they're safe when they participate. So social media strategists, like the social media professionals who built that Prius site, they not only have to create an architecture that allows people to participate easily, they have to help people feel safe. They have to help people feel that their participation matters and that nothing detrimental will happen to them because of their participation. And when you've built an architecture of participation, the effect, of course, again, is this great force. Participation, sort of everyone comes together and sets the agenda, and this can lead to cultural, political, and economic changes, which you're going to read about this week, a couple examples of political changes made from Twitter, made from a system that has really good architecture of participation. And after those systems have been set up, so Twitter exists, the Prius site exists, you as a student, what you can do, even though you haven't gotten to the point where you're going to be a social media strategist yet, what you can do now is learn how to participate. Participation requires literacy. People aren't born knowing how to be good participants in these architectures, in these spaces for participation, you have to learn it. And so you have to learn the skills it takes to use computers, and you have to learn skills it takes to communicate with others. And next week we're going to look at collective intelligence and collaboration, and you're going to read about some skills for being good collaborative group members online. But this week we're talking about participation, and you can learn how to be a good participant. So the biggest tool for participatory literacy is just understanding that you can't just be a consumer. You can't just consume what you see online and not add anything. That's not participation. So you need to do something that brings your unique skills and values to the equation if you're going to participate. And this can be as simple as filtering. When you see something on your Facebook newsfeed that you believe is an important message, the simple act of sharing it is part of participation. You don't have to do a lot to participate. You can do a little. But by sharing it, you send it out even further. I actually had this video recorded from a previous semester, but I wanted to re-record it because I wanted to talk about the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. It's a perfect example of agenda setting through small acts like filtering, tagging, sharing. So many people have shared the Ice Bucket Challenge that it's everywhere now. And no one person has really promoted it more than the rest. It's not like one person wakes up in the morning and all day long sits and promotes the challenge. It's just millions of people doing one simple act, which is sharing it. Even people who don't participate in it, when they share it, when they share the videos of it, they're helping to set the agenda on everyone else's Facebook wall to be geared toward the Ice Bucket Challenge and toward discussing ALS and talking about how you might donate or the need for donations. So at its basic level, participation literacy is just understanding that you make a difference when you share, when you tag, when you see something that's bullshit, when you see something that's crap, which you learned about last week, and you call it out as crap. Those small steps, everyone doing those small steps adds up to a lot. It adds up to an agenda setting. So what we're seeing is that brands are leveraging that. Brands now understand the importance of participating as if they're people. So those of you who are in public relations or you want to go on to be social media strategists, you want to work somewhere doing social media, what you'll learn as you go do that is that you have to be a participant. Social media, the biggest mistake a lot of companies make with social media is they think that it's just Facebook and Twitter. And they just think, oh, let's put some coupons on Facebook. Let's talk about how great we are on Facebook. Nobody cares. Those brands aren't participating. You can't be part of the community if you don't participate. If you're just constantly dumping coupons and information and sales tactics on people, people don't respond. It's not a conversation, and people want to have a conversation. So what brands are learning is that in order to participate, they actually have to share and tag and filter other people's content. So I have a former student who works in social media, and she manages 5 brands. So she does all the tweeting and Facebooking and forum posts for these brands. And her role at her company is called 70-30. So 70% of what she tweets and Facebooks and talks about online for the brand is not even about the brand. It's just about what the brand does. So if the brand is a programming company that does programming for mobile apps, 70% of what she does is just talking about how hard it is to make mobile apps, or what kind of mobile apps are hot right now, or how entrepreneurs can use mobile apps. It's not about selling that programming company. It's about talking about what's going on with mobile apps. Only 30% of what she posts is actually directly selling that company. So 70% of the time, she doesn't say, hey, we're the best at making mobile apps, or hire us for your mobile apps, or here's a coupon for us to make you a mobile app. It's just talking about mobile apps. What's the state of mobile apps? How about design? How do you design a mobile app? How much would a mobile app cost to make? It's just questions that people in that field care about, and only 30% is saying, we're the best at making these, hire us. So the vast majority of what she does is just participating in the conversation that's already happening. It's not promotional in nature. And that's what brands are learning about social media, is that they have to participate and be a part of the community. They can't just go into the community and say, buy our stuff. It's like when you get a flyer stuck on your front door, you don't care because you don't know who it's from. But if your neighbor comes over and tells you about the same company and tells you about a great experience they had with that company, or just tells you about something they know about what the company does, that field, that might get you more interested. So you have to participate, and brands are no different. They have to participate. Now, what's interesting about this is that, in this class, you're not going to learn specific strategies for Facebook and Twitter. And honestly, it's because Facebook and Twitter are just not interesting. They're really not interesting as far as social media goes. They're just social media tools, and even then, they're really not that exciting of tools. And the reason is that Facebook especially are friendship-driven. So Reingold makes a distinction between friendship-driven and interest-driven communities. Friendship-driven communities are like Facebook. You know most of the people in your feed. They are people you have met in real life. They're people you grew up with. They're people in your family. And as a result, they're people who are really similar to you, and that is just god-awful boring. And the things that you guys talk about, it's like baby pictures and, oh, so-and-so got a new job, and it's not groundbreaking stuff. When people come together because of friendships, they tend to be too homogenous for interesting things to happen. They talk about things they've been talking about since they were little kids. When you have your friends on Facebook, you're never like, let's talk about the role of social media in elections. No, you're like, hey, what are you up to? Oh, I had some kids. Oh, great, cool, I got a new job. It's not groundbreaking stuff. And so what's interesting about these tools is that they're really not as good as you think they are. Brands have Facebook, they have Twitter, but again, if they are just using those to talk about themselves, people aren't interested. And those platforms, the architecture of participation on Facebook especially, is not very well set up to harbor diversity and allow different people to come in and comment and have real discussions. It's like, how many times have you seen on your Facebook page or on your news feed, someone gets in an argument on Facebook and the last comment is always, oh, it's just Facebook, who cares, let's all agree to disagree. Facebook is not the place where you have groundbreaking conversations about things. It's not where you learn a lot about yourself or the community or you get information on things. It's just not. It's friendship driven, it's just baby pictures, people with new jobs, interesting things people are doing, dog pictures. It's not agenda setting stuff. So what brands are doing is they're having those things, but they're doing a lot of their work in interest-driven communities. So they're going to forums. Photo companies are paying their employees to go to photo forums and answer people's questions. And not even as an ad. Not say, hey, I'm answering your question because I work for Nikon and oh, you should buy Nikon. But just saying, hey, here's how you had a question about how to use the Nikon 20mm lens. Here, let me tell you. And they just gain traction in this community, and the community comes to see them as a trusted source, and eventually they'll figure out, oh, this person works at Nikon, and they'll go, wow, that's really cool. This Nikon person really helped me, and they didn't want anything from me. They didn't want my money. They didn't try to sell me anything. That person sort of infiltrates the community, and that's where real discussion can happen, and that's where information is sought out. If you want information on a photography problem, you don't go to Facebook, you Google it, you go to a forum, you find a photo.net forum or something like that. So that's what brands are doing. They're using Facebook, sure, they're using Twitter, sure, but that's not where interesting things are happening. They're going to these forums, they're going to people's blogs, and they're participating. And I want to show you a local example. So I'm sure you're all familiar with Scotty's Brew House. The original Scotty's Brew House is in Muncie, Indiana. It was opened in 1996 by Scott Wise. Scott Wise actually lives near me down here in Indianapolis, and I've been to his house and I've interviewed him for an article. So I want to talk a little bit about what I found out when I interviewed him. It's a good example of this brand participation, even though this was a couple years ago, so I'm not quite sure what he's doing now. But Scott Wise is very, very well known in the restaurant industry in Indiana for not advertising. Have you ever seen a Scotty's ad on TV? Have you ever seen a poster? Have you ever heard a radio commercial? You have not. They don't pay their money. They don't pay money for that. Scott Wise is very well known for this. He doesn't spend money on advertising. He puts all of his advertising and marketing efforts in the internet in these participatory areas. So I want to show you a blog post. This is a very small blog on Blogspot called All Your Food Are Belong to Us. Personally, I've never heard about it until I did research for this video. So this is a very small blog, and it's a blog about food in Indianapolis. And this person says, I just don't get Scotty's Brewhouse. And this whole post, they're kind of like, look, here's everything I don't like about Scotty's. Here's what's good, barely anything. Here's what I hate, almost everything. And when you get to the bottom, you'll see someone agrees. And then what is this? It is a response from Scott Wise himself, labeled Scotty's Brewhouse. You'll see his name down here, Scotty, owner. And in this comment, Scott answers some of the questions this person has and sort of not really like defends the restaurant, but sort of pulls up some points. You know, hey, you said you're not really a sports bar person, and well, we're a sports bar, so appreciate your comments, but you know, we're not exactly what you might think we are. And the author writes back, and they start to have a conversation about this blog post. So this is important because anyone who wants to know if they should eat at Scotty's is going to go to Google and they're going to type in Scotty's review. It's very likely that they'll see this blog. And so having Scott's answer on here really makes him look like a part of the community. It makes Scott look like he really cares about getting community members to his restaurants. It makes him sound like a small business owner and not a franchise owner. Makes him relatable, makes him look like he's listening, makes him seem like he's on your side. And so Scott Wise, again, he's very well known for this. Instead of trying to just promote himself on Facebook, he puts a lot of time and effort, and his marketing team does too, into going to these forums and blogs and participating in what's already happening there. And real quick, I just want to show you the system he uses to do that, or at least he did when I interviewed him. It's Google Alerts. You can go to google.com/alerts and you can create an alert about different keywords. So Scotty just has an alert for Scotty's Brewhouse. He creates the alert. He chooses options. As it happens, update alert. And as people talk about Scotty's Brewhouse online, he will get a list of what they're saying. So he'll get a list of sources. And he can go to these and he can talk to these people, whether they're forums or blog posts or news articles. He can go here and he can leave a comment. It's really a brilliant marketing strategy. All he has to do is use this tool to listen to what people are saying, and he can respond. So, oh, my video is a little frozen. There we go. So Scott is really tapped in to this architecture of participation. The architecture in this case is all of the blogs that have been set up to allow a conversation to happen, and he's just using Google Alerts to go see what people are saying about him, and then he's participating. And in his case, he's participating pretty heavily. He's writing comments and answering people's questions, but even just taking that blog and sharing it on his Facebook page would be a great way to participate and promote the agenda of Scotty's. This works out really well for Scott Wise, but this could be an issue. I mean, Scotty's Brewhouse is a restaurant. It's not, you know, you don't have to worry about Scotty's Brewhouse trying to do anything sinister. But brands and organizations can use these same strategies for evil just as well as they can use them for good. And you started to see examples of that during the BP oil spill. BP was buying up keywords so that when people went to Google and typed in, you know, BP oil spill, they got search returns that were really just BP trying to minimize how the damage seemed, how it came across. Instead of getting news articles first, they wanted their own side of the story to come up first. And they can use tools like Google Alerts, you know, to do the same, to go look at blogs and to say, oh, you know, you're not quite right on that. We really do believe in environmentalism, and promote their message. So the Scotty's example seems pretty benign, but this could be used for something more malevolent. If you can participate, if you can get in there and try to control the conversation by participating, you know, you can set the agenda. The agenda in social media is made by those who participate. If the people who participate are all people trying to sell a promotional message or change what people believe about something or trash an idea, then that's what you get when you go look for it. You see all the people who are trying to do that. The agenda then becomes that. You're kind of seeing that with net neutrality. A lot of people are buying up blogs and commenting on blogs and trying to take the conversation over to make it sound like net neutrality is terrible. And so you have to participate. Not only does participating empower you, but if you want to set the agenda in your culture and your society, you need to get out there and participate. You need to be a part of it. You need to forward the information that you think needs to be talked about, and you need to ignore the information and not promote the information that you believe is misleading or malevolent in some way. So that's everything I really wanted to say about the architecture of participation. This week you are going to be curating some social media. So the textbook this week offers several suggestions for how to be a good curator. You're going to stretch your muscles in agenda setting and sort of pulling out social media aspects and adding your own interpretation and explaining why these are important and why people should listen. There's an optional video this week that goes into more detail on how to do that. It's optional, but I do suggest that you look at it. There's just an example I go through in the video. There's also examples of this assignment on the course blog from previous semesters. But as you work on this assignment, I want you to think about that agenda setting function and how you can empower yourself and promote the message. So pick a topic that you believe is important